100% enlargement, maybe
Huh.
200. On occasion, you might move it up. When the image is brought in and goes through the software, they use a different algorithm for each of the amounts of zooming in and zooming out. And you get the most accurate one at 100%. So you can actually see how the things are sharpening or not. Make
And
sense?
if you're over sharpened,
Yep.
what are the telltale signs of that? I know
Well,
skin
the
can pick
first
up
one is halos.
halos. Okay.
Mhm.
If you get a halo around something, you have
Oh,
over sharpened it.
okay.
The other one is probably more subjective. We call it, you have the crunchies.
Mm,
That is, you look at the image and it looks like it's brittle and it'll break if you were to
yeah.
touch it. So that's a sign of over sharpening.
Okay. Thanks.
Or it
Yeah.
looks like it's like cut and paste. Is that right,
Yeah,
Richard?
that'll tend to be over sharpening also. Also having the edges too sharply defined, in reality, is there's a slight fall off on the edges of faces and objects as our eyes move around them.
Yeah.
Remember, our eyes are constantly changing its focus, changing its exposure line, and then it's being simulated up in that knot that holds our spinal cord together. So what we see is not anywhere near what's real. It's just what's kind of been put together through our processor. So there are basically three different kinds of sharpening. And the first one is capture sharpening, tries to make up for the limitations of the sensor and the mechanical processes with the light falling on the diodes and things to make the image. If you open up in Lightroom, you'll see that the preset for sharpening, as I said, I think is set up to about 40. And that's just what it's kind of guessing is how much sharpening you need to take care of that capturing. If you open it up in Photoshop, it doesn't do that for you automatically, or in Adobe Camera Raw. Different editing programs will have different defaults to guess what that number should be, and it's something you can either take with a grain of salt or maneuver, but that is capture sharpening, and it's just a mechanical thing, and it probably should be done early in the process. If you sharpen too much, besides the halos and the crunchies, you'll also oftentimes get noise or other artifacts on the image that you don't want. Now, if you're going to post to Facebook or Instagram or one of those kinds of things, it doesn't much matter because the programs don't give you enough information for that stuff to show. If you're going to print or go in competition or it's going to show something large, that's a different ballgame. The next general kind of sharpening is aesthetic sharpening, and that's where you're sharpening the image because of what you want it to say or what you're trying to show. For example, in Milan's cow or coo, you probably want the hair to be sharp. You probably want his snout to be sharp, and maybe the eyelashes, if you can get in there and see them. So you want that stuff to be sharp, but that flower to the right and the greenery to the left, you probably don't want to sharpen that a whole lot. So selective sharpening or aesthetic sharpening is sharpening those parts of the image that you want to stand out. Remember, if it's sharper, it's going to draw more attention. Now, there's lots of ways to do it, and both Lightroom and Photoshop give us a whole bunch of tools. The on-sharp mask in Photoshop is a destructive tool. Actually, almost all the sharpening programs are destructive, so we probably want to do them on an adjustment layer or a layer that we can adapt. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So you have three controls with on-sharp mask. Understand that when we're sharpening in a program, we're not actually sharpening. All we're doing is enhancing the difference between the dark parts and the light parts. So the amount is how much different you're going to make the darker parts from the lighter parts. The radius controls how wide the area will be, determines what making the shift in. How many pixels different it's judging when it goes to make this is lighter and this is darker. And then the threshold controls how much different you want those to be. So if I find this is dark, this is light and this is dark, the threshold says, well, make this one this much darker or make it this much darker. The radius says, when you're going to find out where the difference between the light and the dark is, how far out do I go to look and see? And then the amount is like a volume control. And you get to play with all three. Now, are there some general rules of thumb? For everything, there are rules of thumb. And remember, in photography, we now do no longer believe in rules. All we have now are suggestions. Everybody's got that right. We don't have rules. It's it's the new millennium. Rules are out. So the suggestions, to start anyway, is that for people, an amount of about 150% usually is a pretty good place to start. A radius of 1 pixel and a threshold of about 10 pixels.
What was the first one, Richard?
People, 150
For what, for what?
for the amount.
Oh, okay.
I'll try, when I send this stuff out, I'll try and write this bit down for you.
So
So
Richard, is this all underneath the unsharp mask? So
this
when it
is,
comes-
this is just in general at this point. So whether, because if you're using it in Lightroom, it's on sharp mask. So it's just a place to start, you know, because like so many, you know, what was it that the Cheshire Cat said? If you don't know where to go, which way you go doesn't much matter. And that's kind of where we are here. So just looking at it starting, one of my favorite quotes, by the way. For city and travel photography, an amount of about 65% is usually good, a radius of about 3 pixels, and a threshold of about 2 pixels. And then for just general photography, an amount of about 85%, a radius of 1 pixel, and a threshold of about 14 pixels.
Question,
Yes.
if you're going to enlarge an image and you also want to sharpen it, I assume you should sharpen it after you enlarge it, since the sharpening has a radius to it.
Yep, I would.
Okay.
I would enlarge first. In fact, Clyde Butcher recommends that you don't do any sharpening until you've enlarged your image up to the size you're going to print it at.
Mhm.
Now, on a lot of this stuff, does it really matter? Probably. Depends how discerning you are. I mean, I've had people sit there and take eye loops and look at one of Butcher's pictures and, well, this sucker isn't sharp. In my wildest dreams, I couldn't get it that good, but oh well, you know, he's world famous and I teach for free. What do you want?
Is that one
Oh.
of his 6-foot prints where you're standing 10 inches away?
Yeah. Yeah. And remember, all these things is, you know, how far you're supposed to be when you look at it and how far you're
Right.
supposed to be. Well, usually the diameter or the diagonal of the picture, just like a television set, is probably the nearest you should be looking at it. So I've got a big 2x3 print in my front hallway, and you can't get 3 feet away from it. You know, you have to look at it too close because I don't have room to show it like it should be. And that's true of a lot of it. So pixel peeping, and that's where you zoom in so far that nothing can be sharp enough is a disease we want to get over. Smart sharpening is another control in Photoshop, and it's a more advanced form of unsharp mask. The reality is that I almost never use it. So the
Richard,
opposite.
if you've got something like Topaz
Yes.
or DxO,
Yeah.
you really don't need to sharpen in Lightroom or Photoshop, do you?
Well, not if you're sharpening in them.
No.
I mean, you know, if you've got a shovel and a spade and a this and a that, how many more tools do you need to dig a hole? And let's face it, most of them are very good. I use different tools at different times. Mostly, I try to get it by the simplest way I can, which means I'm going to do it in Photoshop or Lightroom if that's going to work for me. It's only when I go beyond that or need something extra that I pop out to the other images. For enlarging a lot, I use the Topaz. I like what it does. I think I get less artifacts than I do when I try and do it with Photoshop. For noise, if it's a lot of noise, I'll go to DxO. If it's medium noise, I'll probably do it in Topaz. If it's kind of minor noise, I'll do it right there in Photoshop. You know, it's just whatever's handy at the time. They're just tools, right? None of this is religion. You got that? No religious wars here. You know, the opposite of the sharpening is blur, and generally you're going to want to use Gaussian blur, and it can be used with unsharp mask, and it's good for removing extra blurs and changes in the background. We'll look at that at another time. You've got several different kinds of blurs in Photoshop that we can talk about. I'm of the opinion now that if I can, especially with my capture sharpening, I prefer to do it in Camera Raw. Why? It gives me a backdoor out. It doesn't degrade my image. So that's usually using Lightroom to do it or doing it in ACR. I don't like to use Topaz for that because Topaz means I'm out with a TIFF file. I've lost the ability to edit it as a raw file. With DxO, I can send them back in as a DNG file, which is a digital negative, and I maintain the ability to go back and work on my raw image. So I have all of that unencumbered data to deal with. You have a sharpening tool in your tool thing. It's a brush, and it'll add a kind of a coarse sharpening to various things. It kind of works in a pinch. Or like if I wanted to try and do the eyelashes on the old coup over there, I might do that with the sharpening brush, because I don't think you're going to sit there and stare into his eye, unless of course you decide to do a nose to nose with him, and then I'm probably not going to be able to help you much. High pass sharpening is a non-destructive form of sharpening. We've talked about that before, haven't we? High
Yeah.
pass sharpening.
Yeah, we
Yep.
have.
Yeah. So and I think of the ones that I use in Photoshop, it probably is my favorite. We can also sharpen in lab color, LAB. And I think this year, if you all are up for it, we're going to spend more time talking about lab or LAB. It has certain advantages. It's another step, and it kind of goes against the grain. The grain is to make everything no think, simple, I'll do it for you, right? So that's all of the things that come out that are newer and bigger and better, do it automatically. So it removes us from our input and our control of the image. Lab gives us incredible control of both colors and sharpness and definition of colors that is pretty darn amazing. So we'll talk about that if you want. We'll talk about this year. If we want to go ahead into portraiture, we'll talk about frequency separation sharpening, and that's a way to sharpen and be able to fix skin tones and flesh and still maintain the texture and the look and the sharpness of hair and clothing and stuff like that. So you can see there, Dallas, that sharpening is a problem for all of us, and it's a job mostly of gritting and doing. If you sharpen something, zoom too far out, you will not be able to see the impact or the effects of the sharpening. That's why we want to do it 100%. You also won't be able then to see the artifacts that it's producing, the small halos. It is producing halos no matter what it does, because remember, it's making the lighter pixels lighter and the darker pixels darker. So that gives you the opportunity for a halo to develop. The question is, at what point does it become troublesome? And on Facebook, it's really hard to make it be troublesome, right? Or on the back of your cell phone, which is why cell phone pictures look so great, because the suckers are tiny.
Mm.
We can use different types of sharpening together for different effects, and I do. So if I'm starting to do my impact sharpening, I may use 3 or 4 different sharpening techniques to sharpen whatever it is I want to look at. And that's where the function of masks and selections comes in so handy. So did that totally confuse you, Dallas? Good. He's got his head going in 4 directions.
Sure did.
Yeah.
There's way too many options.
Well, yeah, that's the wonder of it.
And I have purchased denoise and denoise and sharpen and photo A1.
Yeah.
And what I find with those programs is it way over sharpens. So I back them down all the time. Even if I use the denoise, there's in the automatic on denoise, it sharpens the image. And so you have to click on it, the sharpen part of it, and I draw it down to 10 because I find that all of them sharpen way too much, all of those artificial intelligence programs.
Yeah. But again, your comment says that my image just turned out sharp enough. So there's some happy medium between them. Now you can take those sharpening in, bring them in stronger, and then when you bring that layer in, you can cut down its opacity. You follow me? And then just build it up slightly from that way, so that you've got the power there where you need it. And then by masking different parts of it, you can get the eyes super sharp, tip of the nose, the lips, the eyebrows, and then back off the sharpening as you go back into the background. That's part of why we have those controls.
I never thought of that. That's cool. I never thought to sharpen it at different levels and then use a mask to reveal the areas you wanted to. I never thought of that.
Yeah, fun stuff.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I've got one that I've just done. I've got a building in Chicago. I've got 3 different buildings in that are all sharpened differently. Things within the windows and the architecture is sharpened yet a different way. And then I've got the buildings in the background blurred 2 different ways, all on layers back and forth, changing it. Now, when your eye looks at it, it combines all that stuff. It has no idea what you did, right? It just looks more like what I think it looked like when I saw it. And that's the trick there too. It's what I think I saw, because God only knows what I really saw.
That I was surprised one time when I had a mask on something and I sent it to Topaz and it just did the masked
Yeah.
area. I'm like, I didn't know it could do this.
Yeah, got to be careful with all this stuff. All right, so we've talked about the lightness of the monitor, a major problem for all of us. By the way, if you use Lightroom and you print from it, there is a control right in Lightroom for lightening and darkening it in the print module. It's that common a problem. So just play with it. All right, Deborah, you sent me a letter asking about how you set up your workspace.
Well, it wasn't how we set up the workspace. It's how we use Photoshop.
Talk to me more about that.
Okay, so when I have my Photoshop set up, I'm back to you, but on my left-hand side are my tools and the top is the menu, and the right-hand side, when I open Camera Raw, that's where all of those controls are.
Yep.
For basic. So I know what Camera Raw does. I've done lots of things in there. But if you don't open Camera Raw, you have your image open in Photoshop.
Yep.
And you can still do a lot of things. You can dodge. I'm finding that I'm almost using a lot for quick editing. I'm using dodging and burning. I can actually go up to image and I can use adjustments there. They're global. I understand they're global, but it's like I call it the east versus west, or the left versus the right. Is there a time that we should go to Camera Raw and do things there, or are there times that we should just, I never know quite where I should be.
Neither does anybody else.
Okay. That's
Now, are there times when we should use Camera Raw? Of course, it's when it
Yeah,
can do the
there's
job
some things,
better.
of course, that I know specifically, and I'm there for that. And maybe that's good enough just to leave them there, and the rest do on the left-hand side.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are times and when we're working with that, where that makes the most sense to go back and use the tools that you
And I
have in
find
Camera
sometimes
Raw.
I do that. I do go back and forth.
And that's, I think, exactly how it's supposed to be.
Okay.
I like to start out in Camera Raw. As most of you know, I tend to start out in
Okay.
Lightroom because it's simple and it's the Camera Raw editor right there. And then I
Yeah.
enter that up as a smart filter.
Yeah.
And then I can make changes there. And that's good, because if you say, well, gee, I would have liked to have made this lighter, or maybe this should have been a little sharper, or maybe I need to change my color balance a little bit. Better to do that in the bottom of the stack row, in the original raw image, because you're not changing pixels. Now, if I'm up in the stack in Photoshop and I'm working up here, and then I say, well, I'm going to invoke the Adobe Camera Raw editor, right? I'm no longer working on the raw image.
What are you working on?
I'm now working on the image that I've created from the raw image.
Okay.
Okay. So when
It's
I
still
go
a raw image, but it's an altered raw image.
well, it's not raw anymore.
Oh, what is it? It's like a DNG or something?
It's a Photoshop image.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Let me move over to Photoshop for a second.
Okay.
And see if we can't. Is that all right? If I lost anybody completely?
I mean, it's not a big, I just find myself thinking.
Well, that's, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go over to the photo stacking, because that way we can open a Photoshop in movement, and then we can go back and look at those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I would like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Richard, if
Yeah.
you open up your raw image in Photoshop and then you create another layer, like
Yep.
you leave your original image locked.
Yep.
And you're working now from your layer 1 or whatever you want to call it, if you've named it something.
Right.
Any changes that I'm making, destructive or otherwise, am I doing it strictly to the layer 1 and above in the stacks, and the background layer, which is locked, which is the original one, that is not being destructive, right?
That's right. You can always go back.
Right. Okay. So that's what I wanted to, because I was trying to understand from what you were just saying, because I always thought that, my original one. So when I'm done with it and I choose to, what I've been doing is when I do a save as, rather than a save. If I do a save, is it going to alter my original image? Or will it be creating a new image and I still have my old original image?
Yep. Yeah, that
Okay.
was an answer that made no sense. So what's happening is when you say it is, as long as you don't collapse it, when you save it
Okay.
and all the layers are there, then you can go back and turn off layers and that original image is still there. When you
Okay.
collapse it, then you erase the original image.
Unless I do a collapse and save as, then I still have my original on my computer, but now I'm saving the adulterated version as another entity, but I
Right.
still have my original on my computer,
Yeah.
right?
When you work in Photoshop and you save it, you can't
Right.
save it back as an NEF or as a raw file. It has to go in as a PSD file.
Right.
So
Okay.
your original raw file, whatever camera you're using, is still there.
Is always there. Okay, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just thought for a minute, I thought,
Okay.
oh, did I
Well-
screw up? But no.
Well, you used to be able to screw up easier than now, but
Yeah.
what I wanted to talk about here is creating a fake long exposure. And why would I want to do that? Well, if I wanted to get the idea of moving clouds, I would want a longer exposure. Or if I wanted to get the idea of smoother water in a waterfall or something like that, I'd use a long exposure, right? I mean, that's how we do that. Well, this clearly is a bright day.
Yeah.
So I can't set my camera up for a 30-second exposure here, especially if it's handheld.
Right.
There's a lot of techniques to do this, but the one here that seems to work pretty well is to start out hand holding what you want to shoot the image of and take as many images as seems reasonable to capture the image and holding your camera still. How many is enough? Well, we're going to do this one with 4 images to capture the water and smooth it out. You could take a whole lot more, and that's a real scientific term, but it has to
Richard,
do.
they're all the same, they're at all the same settings?
I just took the picture and I shot a bunch of pictures. I didn't change nothing.
Okay, good, because I have some that you told me to do that with that I haven't played with, so.
Okay, well, yeah, I took them all, and they're just all the same. And I went through and just kind of looked at them and tried to get the ones that I thought seemed the nicest. So there they are.
That's 1/8,000th of a second.
Yeah, it was a bright day. And I'm trying to do this as a demonstration. So that's pretty darn quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through here and kind of pick some that I think would do. Normally I would try to shoot maybe for 5. I suppose you could do it with less than 4. I haven't tried it, but the image should work. And I suppose if you were really compulsive, you could take a whole bunch more. So what
But
we're
if they're all the same, why are you taking multiple photographs? Couldn't you just use one and just reproduce it or copy
well,
it or use it
what
as,
if I'm trying to make this into silky fluffy water? You'll
oh,
do that
I
to
get it.
paint it or to morph it
Sure.
or to stretch it.
Sure.
So what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do is simulate as if I'd had the cameras open for 30 seconds
Sure.
as opposed to 1/8,000th of a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this one and click this. I've picked these 4 images. They're the ones I'm going to try to combine and to make one image that's going to have the water more flowing. Okay.
Yep.
And I'm going to edit, and I'm going to edit it in Photoshop, and I'm going to open it as in layers. Now, could you just load these all into layers into Photoshop directly? The answer is yes. Could you do it using Bridge? And the answer there is yes also. I just find works for me. So it's going to take this a few seconds to load in these 4 images. So here it's bringing them in.
Now, if you took those images and put them in through to a photo stacking program, would that give you a similar effect?
I think it depends on the program, but probably, because what we're going to do is we're going to stack them here in Photoshop.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, the part I'm going to do now is not part of the technique, but I'm going to take these 4 layers and I'm going to make a group from them And then I'm going to bring them back. So this is just a step so we can go back and look and see what the difference is. Okay, so those are the 4 that I brought in. Okay, and this one here is just to help us out later. So the first thing we want to do in the edit menu is come down here and auto align the layers. And I just use the automatic. So what's auto align going to do? It's going to try and change any of the little shakes and movements in the camera so that all the pieces are sitting in about the same place.
So the only thing that's different really in the images is the water, just the way it's flowing.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's it doing now? It's taking each of those images and it's twisting them and turning them so that the straight parts line up and that they're straight. I mean, that's what it's attempting to do for us. And the closer and more steadily you hold the camera, the easier this is going to be. So they're all lined up now. And if we turn them up, you shouldn't see the buildings moving much. You will see the frame. See the frame change right there?
Yeah, well, the
The
water
outside
change-
edge, yeah.
And
water
so
change, yeah.
that's how it moved it to, you see down here, how there's white down here on this part it's showing. So that's what moved and twisted the pictures a little bit to get them to line up. So they're all now aligned. We're going to go back up here to the layer menu and we're going to convert them to a smart object.
All of them, all the layers?
All those layers that we're working on.
Okay.
So it's a smart object because I can double click on it and get back to where it was, but they're all there in that smart object. I'm going to go back up here to layer, back here to smart object, and I'm going to come down here to stack mode. This be like your external stack program. And I'm going to choose mean, which is kind of like the average. So I'm going to click on that and it's going to calculate through and try and find the mean location of each of the pixels.
Very
Click down in here.
nice.
Well, that's cool.
That's cool.
Is that not fun?
Yeah, that's very nice. Would this work for the ocean if you wanted to try to smooth out the ocean? Do you
Yes,
think?
ma'am. It would work for just about anything.
Mm.
Okay, so
Yeah, it's very pretty.
pick this up here. So if we go back here,
Hmm.
that's what it looked like before.
Yeah,
Remember?
yeah,
And that's what it looks like now.
that's pretty simple to do that.
Now, sometimes I've found when I've done a long exposure or tried this method that it gets to be too smooth. I've lost some of the the drama and the dynamics of it.
Mm.
So one of the things you can do here is, let's say, for example, I thought I liked the water action here a little bit more.
Mhm. Oh, so you don't include that maybe in the,
Well, you can not include it, or you can come back and paint part of it back in. So if I'm going to paint part of this back in, see how it jumped there?
yeah?
Mhm.
So what I want to do now is try and align this image with the images down here. I'm going to bring the opacity down so I can kind of see through it, just to control so that I can see it. So I'm going to take this image now and I'm going to move it. See up there, the rock?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to bring it down so it lines up with the rock that was there. Okay, so that approximates where it was.
Well, when you chose auto align, didn't it do that?
It did that down here, but I didn't auto align these. This is the
Oh,
original
okay.
way I
These
put
are
them
the
in.
originals. Oh, okay.
So, it's been auto aligned here, but up here, it's still, that's how much it aligned this one image. So
Okay.
now I'm going to take this image here. I'm going to hold down the Alt key or the Option key and hit my layer mask, click. Then I can take a white brush and I've got a flow of 25%. So I can come in here on this black mask. And let's say I want to bring in some of that texture of that water there. See it coming back in?
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought that was a mask, but yeah, that's really cool.
All right, so now what I've done is I've added a little bit more texture into a couple of these spots,
Hmm.
which I think maybe made it a little bit more exciting. Maybe a little bit down here.
Huh.
So there I have a waterfall.
Yeah.
So pretty much clever.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that a lot. So you should assign us homework that we have to do one of these for next meeting.
We could do that. Homework's a great idea.
We're also used to homework.
So Richard, how is that layer that you just used your brush and opened that up?
Right?
How is that being made visible when the top layer is the group photo? Is that the, oh no, okay, so which one is the top layer? The original one or the one that's been grouped and you did the
That's the original. Well, it's not because I got to put these all back on. That's the original image right there. That's this top group.
Okay, all right, that's why it's showing through, because I thought the other one was on the top layer and I
Well,
thought, how is that?
I moved them around just
Okay,
just to
that's
do
what I
this.
didn't notice. Yeah, there was a little,
Okay.
a sleight of hand there. Okay, so that's
And
why
you
I
can-
thought,
and
how
you can
is
see-
that showing through?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it's doing. And see, it's only coming through here just a little bit because they only needed a hint of it to bring back that action.
Right,
Because that's the
Yeah.
beauty of the masks. So that locked
now
that.
you couldn't do that without putting the original 4 on the top.
That's right. I could have brought one of them back in as another image and done it. But yeah,
Right.
I had to save the original image to do that.
Right, okay.
And you know, does it make a lot of difference? No, it's very subtle. Yep.
Now,
Just-
how did you turn that into a mask? Because it's it's no different if it's a smart object
Nope.
to turn a mask on it. It's the
Nope.
same way.
Same way.
Okay. All right.
Same way. Okay, so I was going to show you from here what I was talking about. So if I'm up here working on this and I do an Adobe Camera Raw edit, so let me do a Command Shift Alternate E. That's our
That's
grouping
awesome.
thing.
Yeah.
So that's right there. And so my camera raws are down here,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So if I click on this and I use the camera raw filter, I'm no longer working on the raw image.
Not
So
at
it's going to give me the raw editor here in a second.
Mhm. Well, the raw, yeah,
Well, it's
Camera
not, is it?
raw.
Because it's going to be working on an image that has the smooth water.
yes. I mean, it can work on a JPEG even, so.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't care.
No.
You know, it's just going to give you those tools back to use.
Right.
So if you have a tool that does it better,
Will you see it in history?
it shows that I applied it right here.
That's, yeah, I've had that. I wondered if it was because it's a smart object.
Well, it's not a smart object. Remember,
Oh,
I
it's
made a copy here.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, it's weird. But I have that happen to me lots of times and
Yeah.
I can't figure out how to get it back.
My guess is that's probably a bug with the new edition.
Oh.
Anybody else had that experience?
Haven't tested yet.
I have that experience in Lightroom when I do Topaz, but I believe that's because I have Topaz as a plugin in Photoshop and not Lightroom. That's deep, I know.
Try and remind me to show you that in Lightroom. There's another place where it might be hiding in your Lightroom panels. Okay, so that was that. That was the smart filter. So let's move on to starting to talk a little bit about actions. Does that work?
Mhm.
Okay, so normally the idea here is it's to your advantage that if you do something more than 3 or 4 times, it's probably smarter to make an action out of it. Why? Because it saves times. It helps keep you from making mistakes and gives the tool a way for you to get to it. And so if you come up here to Windows, you have this thing here, actions. It's Control F9 or this little black arrow over here. And as long as we were talking, Deborah, this is the standard pull menu that you have on the wrong side.
No, you have it all outside.
Yeah, well,
I'm
yeah.
kidding.
Who's the
I know,
teacher here?
I understand.
This is another panel, you know, that where I apply various of these tools, but I can get to them easier. They're there to make it easier. So if we go back up here to, so you get these different layouts when you load in Photoshop. So this is the standard one that when you first open it up, plain vanilla, that's the layout that you get. Toolbar
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah.
Some tools here.
Yeah.
And you can get to see this icon up here.
Mhm.
That's the easiest way to get to it. You can also get it up here through your window and this workspace control here. 3D, we don't have to worry. Motion is probably not important. If you're painting with it, this is the set of tools. Photography is the one that I would normally suggest that you start out with, and it brings the tools in like this and gives you this toolbar here where you can add tools from your,
Oh, that's where those comes from.
and then you just bring them in there and they go in. So
Okay.
that's how that happens. Then as I play with this, I keep making new iterations of how I think it's going to work best for me. And I just keep changing them. And when I save them as a new one, I save my toolbars, my shortcuts, and the layout. So it's just an easy way for me to work. And so for example, if I were to come over to your house and we were going to work on your machine, I have one in here that's called teaching, and it lays things back up in this most simple form. So I should have all the same tools that you have in the same way, rather than the ones that I've added or subtracted.
Mm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So it is kind of important to save that because I wiped it out the other day
Yeah.
and I had to recreate it and I was like, oh shit.
All right. Well, let's talk about this. So I'm clicking here. I've got this one here. And down here it says reset. That means if I were moving things around here and did something funky, let's do that. Like I put this over here and I brought this one out and I was working on it big to show you something. I come back up to this. I can, if I say reset, remember I got this one out here, these two. So reset takes it back to whatever it was supposed to be before. They went back to place. So I didn't mess anything up. After I've worked on it, I come down here. I create a new workspace. So I've got it all set up the way I want it to be. I'll click a new workspace. And so I give it a name, a unique name. And I suggest that every time you muck around with this thing that you say the keyboard shortcuts, the menus, and the toolbars, however you have them set.
Mm.
Okay. And then you just save it and it'll show up on your list
Mm.
of ones to use. And then, yeah, when you
Yeah.
decide that that was a big mistake, you just erase them.
Can you share your workspaces?
I think so.
Now, on your toolbar, is that arrow that looks like a play thing? Is that an actions shortcut?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How did you bring it to there?
Okay. So window,
Uh-huh.
actions. There it
Action.
is.
Yeah.
And then I take this and I drag it. Take this and I drag it
Oh.
there. And now it's there.
Oh, I see. Oh, right. Okay, good. Yeah. Now
And
I've
then
got it there.
I save it
Okay.
Yeah.
because that's the new
Mhm.
menu. Now, gee,
Yeah.
I'm used to it being up here. So I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to return reset 17. See right here?
Yeah.
And it went back to where it was before.
Okay.
Otherwise, I
Right.
would have saved that as 18.
Right. Okay. Got it. Perfect.
Okay. Now, the one here and the one up here is exactly the same.
Mhm.
Okay. It's just, I can get it here easily. I'm used to finding it there.
Mhm.
And so that's where it goes. So these are tools that I find that I use. And my toolbar is standard, except for I added the paint bucket tool because I kept losing it.
Is
So I
it
just,
under window? Is it under window?
it's
paint
with
bucket
it's
tool?
with gradients and 3D. It's under the
I've-
gradient.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've lost it too sometimes.
So I just added it, and that's
Mhm.
just another change.
Richard,
Oh.
would you please show us how you saved that workspace again, please?
Sure. Let's do that. Let's come out here and let's move this over to here and let's move this over here, that's the channels panel. And this is the text panel. Okay, so I've got those. Take this one, I'm going to move it to there. I'm going to move this one down to here. And this one down to here. So that's a whole new panel, right? And let's add something else just for fun. I'm going to add that too, because I'm going to do it. So there I've got 4 change tools. So I'm going to come up to here and come down here and click on new workspace. Or I come up here to window, workspace, and see I've got a new workspace down here.
Yes.
They're both the same. Workspace. I'm going to call this
It gives you menu. Okay. Titles. Okay.
PUG
Thank you.
1. And then because I want to keep everything else that I fixed, I enter these 3 and I do save.
Got it.
I come back up here. There's PUG 1 right there. And PUG 17, or Richard 17 is still there. And now it's here. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I was going to do an action. So for an action, let's do a Shift Command Control E. If we click on my action tab, where you're going to start making an action. And what is an action? An action is simply a file that runs a bunch of steps. It is not smart. So it only does what you tell it to do. If you're going to ask it to look for something that's not built into Photoshop, you have to tell it where it's going to find something. And it has to always be there for it to find it. Otherwise, it'll crash. Does that make sense? You're not limited by the number of steps. You can have lots and lots and lots of steps. This one that we're doing here, some of the ones are very simple. Just a series of steps here, and it'll just execute all of those steps for me pretty much automatically. In fact, let's look at that real quickly. This is a dodge and burn using luminosity curves. So if you click on it, that's the one, and you hit this little button down here, that'll make it play. So it says you want to make sure the top layer was selected. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to select the top layer. I'm going to run it again. Click. It just ran the steps for me. They're right here. So this is your, click this down. So in here, this is a dodge and burn layer. So this is the one that lightens, and this is the one that darkens. So if I work on the lightened one, go with I believe it's a white brush that I use for this. And I can see it how it's doing, it's lightening it up. If I click on this one, my white brush, it darkens it down. So what did it do? It made those layers, it set their mask, put in the curves adjustment layer for me, the darkening layer, the lightening layer, put the mask on it, and named it. Pretty easy. So that's the ease for it, and it names it the right thing. So let's move back here. So let's go ahead and make one. So you have to decide what do you want it to do. And so what I want it to do is to make the layer. I want it to name it. I want it to color it. I want it to give me a shortcut. Okay? Someone say yes.
Yes.
Well, see, when I'm here, I can't tell if you're there yet or not anymore.
We're here.
You know, and I'm crazy enough without talking in the dark. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go ahead and make that action. So I'm going to go up here to my action panel. I'm going to click up the little stack of pancakes here. Click on that, and I'm going to do a new action. And the first thing it's going to ask me is where I want to put it. So I'm going to put it in with PUG. That gave me all my actions into there. And I'm going to name this stamp visible. And because I want to make our lives easy, I'm going to call this, because I've already got one called this, I'm going to call it 2. So I'm going to give it a function key. So I'm going to make it F2.
How many shortcuts are in your brain, Richard? I just will have to wonder.
The problem is that I forget them all the time. I'm thinking about making a list and pasting it here to the side of the computer. So I'm going to call it F2 Shift and Command. And I'm going to make it green so that it stands out, so that I know that I've done it. Okay. So now it tells me that it wants me to record the action. So I'm going to record the action. And anything I type in now, it's going to execute when I go to do the thing. So the first thing I think I want to do is put in a stop bar, which gives me a place to write a message. So I've written a message here that this action creates the new stamp visible layer, names it, colors it green, makes a shortcut. So that tells me what it did. And then I have to click down here that I want the program to continue to run if I ask it to. So that's an instruction sheet that I don't normally put in, but you can. So I click OK. So now that became the first stop right here. So the next thing I want it to do is to go ahead and run the stamp visible. So that would be Shift, Alternate, Command Control, and the letter E. So that's it right here. Then I want it to name that. So I click here and type in stamp visible. Okay. Then I want to make it green. Okay. Was there anything else I said I wanted it to do? Green, renamed it, stamped it. No, I think that's everything. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to press this black box here, which stops it. That stops the recording. And now I have this control here. So here's the name of it. Here's the shortcut right here. So let's get rid of it. Let's just delete that. Yes. So we're back where we are before. I'm going to click on it from here. I'm going to press the play button. There it gives me the message that I had before. I want it to continue. If I made a mistake, like I remember I did not have that other one, selecting the top image to run the action, I could stop it and start over again, but I'll have it continue. And there it is. It's a green layer. It's been renamed and it's built. Okay, let's get rid of it again. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit down Shift, Control, and F2. Same message, continue. There it is.
Mhm.
So did that seem pretty simple?
Hmm.
I'm not
So
hearing a
you
lot of
didn't,
yes.
you didn't create the actions. No, I guess that's not the right word. So first you created what you wanted the actions to be within the parameters of the photograph. And then you went back and created the actions from that. Is that what you did?
Nope, not at all.
No.
So
Okay.
let's take a look at this action first. So what it did is the first thing here is I put in a message
Okay.
because somebody mentioned that they couldn't remember what things were.
Right.
And so a way to solve that is to put in a disclaimer telling you what it is.
Okay.
Then
And you
start
access that operation by,
hitting the pancake menu up here.
okay.
So, and then we did what I wanted to do. We did this, we did the Shift Command Control E right here.
Right.
And then what I did is I renamed it. That's on this layer.
Yeah.
And then on this layer here, I color coded it green.
Okay.
Okay, and then I hit the stop button and then it's done. Now, the wonderful thing about this is, let's say that you're using this and you said, Richard, this is better than sliced bread. I'm never going to not use it. I'll never forget what the instructions are. I can click on the instruction sheet here, right? And
Mhm.
I can drag it down to the trash can and it's no longer in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
So now all of these actions that I built and that other people build are done that same way. Some of them are very complicated. Like zone map for film. See, here's a set of instructions. That's a lot of steps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what does that do? Well, let's click, see if we can find out what it does. We're going to click on zone map for film and we're going to run it. So this down here is telling you the instructions, and what it did is it made a zone map right here for me. And I can turn the zones on and off and look at them to see what the image did. So it had to make copies and smart copies, and some things have masks and different amounts to blend them. So it's doing all that work in the background, so you don't have to remember to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
that's what that whole bit does.
Now, Richard, somehow I have lost that part of your Adobe Photoshop screen at the top that's above the photograph where it says mode, normal, opacity, flow. Mine disappeared. What did I do to it?
Richard,
Yes.
I just went back to my emails because I have actions that you sent us before.
Yeah.
And I looked to see they were titled PUG
Yep.
2
Yep.
ATM. So what is in there?
Oh, I don't know. Whatever I decided to give you. Let's
I
see.
think I have those
Because
too.
I went in and it's like, oh my gosh, what is this? I can't remember what they were.
Harmonic grids. We can talk about that. So this is PUG.
I mean, if I had Photoshop open, I could probably look and
PUG
tell you
2.
more because it's in there.
PUG
Yeah, PUG 2, that's the ones that you sent.
So the first one was a README that gave you some instructions. Dodge and burn 50% gray. It makes a new layer for dodge and burn. Sets the mask on it with a 50% gray background that you paint either white or black to dodge and burn something. So let me, by the way, there was the color maps that I showed you. So this one here takes each zone.
Ah,
Okay, so zone 0 are the parts that we see all of it here. Good screen. See, so the black parts are zone 0, the darkest blue 1, medium blue 2, all the way up to zone 10.
Wow.
Okay, so I was into something and I wanted to do this, so I created an action that would then map out the entire picture for me.
wow.
That's fantastic.
Okay, so that's what that one did.
Where's my actions?
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and run this action here. So I'm going to do it on the group 1. So I'm just going to run it. Bang. Continue. So what it told us that what it's going to do is it's going to create a new layer. So it's created a layer with a mask on it. I need to paint black and white to dodge and burn. So white, brush, bigger. So there's the black. I click over here to white, it's going to lighten it. So that's a dodge and burn layer that I can change the opacity of. Here I can change it down, bring it back up. So that's what that one does. The next one then does the same thing, except it it doesn't put the gray layer, it only leaves it as clear. Now, why would I do the difference? Because somebody asked me about dodging and burning. So let's go back and do that a little bit. The soft light. And we're going to fill the layer with 50% gray. Why would I fill it with 50% gray? Anybody?
Can't remember.
Okay, in soft light, soft light ignores 50% gray.
Oh,
If you add white to soft light, it lightens something. If you add black to soft light, it darkens something. So I have a soft light layer here filled with 50% gray. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lighten this part down in here. I'm going to use a brush. I'm going to use a soft brush. And I'm going to use as large a brush as I think I can get away with. Why? The larger the brush and the softer the brush, the more difficult it'll be for someone to see the edges.
mhm. Yeah.
So they blend in better.
I was going to say that.
For the same reason, I'm going to put down with a low flow.
Mhm.
Okay, remember, flow is like using a spray paint. As you spray one sweep and hold it down and spray back over, it puts down more paint. So I'm going to use this big brush and I'm going to lighten it right there. Well, that probably was a little heavy.
Yeah.
So what can I do? I can come up here to edit and I can undo the brush tool. I can also use Control Z. So what can I do? I can make the flow less. 9. So let's come in here. Now that's not so bad.
So would you do that, the flow instead of the opacity?
Well, if I'm building up and I'm saying, well, I'm going to put it in here and put it in here, I'm going to build it up. That's one technique. If I take this back up to 100 and then bring the flow, let's say back down to that same number, about 8. And now I'm going to use the opacity. I'm going to, here it is. I brought it in, right? Now, if I keep going over it, it doesn't make any difference. I have to let go of the mouse and press it again to put down another coat of the paint. That's the difference between these two. Let's build this up a little more so you can see it. So here it is once. I took my finger off thing, I put down another layer, picked it up, put down another. Now down here, I'm going to press down. I'm going to paint. I'm not moving my finger. See how it doesn't change?
Mm-hmm.
So this one, it built up as I went. This one was more constant. It just depends on what you want to do. So if I'm working on a building, I probably want it to be more constant. If I'm working on someone's face, I probably want it to be more paintbrush-like. Extra sharp brush. I gave you this is the one that creates a sharpening layer. It is really, really strong. So let's run that one. Back here, turn that up, bring it back here on top of the stamp, visible.
Okay, so each of these are separate actions.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's one thing I was lost on when I first, I'm like, what, I got it now.
Okay, so each is one, and on this one, it makes something really, really sharp. So bring it back with white, and then it makes it sharper and sharper and sharper. So that's, yeah, each one's a separate action. What I can do is maybe go through here and try and write explanations for them and reissue them if that's, if that's a help. But yeah, an action is just a series of things that makes everything work more better.
Yeah, because they went in as PUG 2, I was thinking it was like one action. And then when I saw all of it, but no, it's just how you grouped all those actions to send it out was as.
On it, it's worth your time to make sure that your action is right, and maybe do it 2 or 3 times until you get it the way you want it, because once you've got it and got it working, you've got it forever. And it doesn't take any extra space to speak of. If you're not using it, it doesn't do anything. It's just there. some that I use all the time. Now, why would I use one for the control alternate stampede? Why? Because I find that, especially because I'm trying, to share this stuff, I want to name the block. So I mean, I have to stop and then have to rename it rather than just whatever it is. So that's why for me to do that, to have it name it and change its color so you can see where it is, that's just another tool that's available. Is it necessary? Not at all. It's just nice.
Well, I think that's helpful because I had a hard time finding how to do a stamped visible on something I was doing. And I'm like hunting all over in all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pull down menus.
So
Yeah.
I'll polish that up a little bit and I'll send that to you.
Mhm.
Promise, promises are good, but I tend to make them. But I think that'll be handy now. Using the shortcuts, that shift control and the F2. The reality is that I've got so much of that crap, I don't remember them. So for me, it's easier just to go up and pick the name from the pile because I try to name them with something that I'll remember.
Yeah.
So, but if I write it there, it works. So I have a few things I've tried that, and I just don't have the mental facilities to do that. It's just not part of how I'm wired. So I write them out. The names of your actions, just like the names of your layers, should be something that gives you an idea of what the heck's going on.
Mhm.
The more you can do that, the happier your
Yeah.
life's going to be. The thing is, you can take one. Remember, I showed you how you could take that note and erase it. You can add that note back in at a later date. I mean, you can edit an action.
Mhm.
Some people will tell you you can't, but you can.
And
The
you can
trick-
duplicate an act. Can you duplicate the action?
You can duplicate it. If I'm going to sit there and edit one, customize it, I'll duplicate it, and then I'll work on the duplicate
Mhm.
and
Great.
leave the
That-
original, unencumbered
Mhm.
until I make what I want. So I find them very useful indeed. So was tonight reasonably helpful?
It was
Mhm.
great. I want to
Yes.
try fake long exposure. So hope your tape will work. And when we get the tape of this evening, I'm going to take the images and then work. It's just easier if you have something to follow. I've taken notes, but it's kind of
Well, I
difficult.
think for that one,
might
what I
have
might
left
do, if it's okay,
out.
is I'll work on that, but I've written it out. So
Oh, have you? Okay.
I'll send that to you as a written
Okay.
document.
That would be great. Yeah.
Because I think it's handy enough. You don't need it very often. And what's the trick? Go out and find some place that's got something moving.
Yeah.
Um,
We could try it with clouds.
you could do it with clouds. I find if you're doing that on a windy day, you need to be careful about how you pull it out because the trees will move.
Yeah, right.
And it can only merge things that are fairly close. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you get a blur in there.
The ocean would be great if I just
The
go to
ocean
the
is very
beach
good for it.
with
Yeah.
some waves churning up. That would be, or just see how we could smooth the water. I'd love to try
Now,
that.
if you do that, a couple
Mm.
things happen. Your ISO setting will be the same as whatever it was divided by the number of shots. So that shot that I showed you was shot at an ISO of 640. We used 4 images. That means it was
Oh,
as
no
if I had
kidding.
shot it at 160.
Really?
So
You
it
didn't tell
cuts
us that.
it cuts down noise.
Oh. it cuts-
Okay. And the speed is
Yeah.
the same factors. I did that at 1/8,000th. So it was 4 shots. So it was 1/4 of that. So 1/8,000th would be 1/4,000th, 1/2,000th, 1,000th of a second. So that wasn't that long an exposure by the time I got done messing with it.
Huh.
You follow
You
me?
better write that out for us too.
I did.
Okay.
But now you can't take the same image and duplicate it 4 times and then try and do this
No, I
because
can
it's
see
going to
that.
find the mean. And since
Yeah.
they're all the same, the mean
Yeah.
will be all the same.
Of course, it defeats the
Well,
purpose.
this mean and average and all that
Yeah,
other
no,
stuff
no.
has never been very clear.
Hmm.
So that gives you that information. But yeah, the only place I've had issue with it is with when I've tried to do a water image and the trees are moving in the background, which is where I came up with taking that original image and putting it on top and then masking out the part that I didn't want. That's how I came up with that idea. So they have one set of trees that were taken at the sharp setting so the leaves weren't moving.
Well, I was thinking of sunset with some rocks in it.
Rocks are good.
I live near Seagate, so sunset with the waves action, try to smooth out the ocean.
You know, I could probably do that in Naples.
Yeah.
That was a joke.
I know.
Uh,
No, I'm here at Seagate. I'm here in Naples.
Yeah, so, but very, very useful. I haven't tried it with clouds.
Yeah.
But, oh well, now clouds. On this, by the way, on this trip, I took a lot of pictures of ocean because I wanted to see what I could do with it. And it took a lot, I always take pictures of clouds. Why? Because almost all the pictures need better skies.
I know.
And I'm just not, I'm just not intimidated by that factor of truth. I want it to look good.
I know.
Um,
Every
so,
time we travel, we get nothing but blue sky.
yeah,
Just blue sky.
yeah.
Oh,
Great song, lousy for photography.
I know. Everybody says, oh, it's such beautiful weather. It's like, yeah, but there's not a cloud in the sky.
Yeah, so
You should
I
go
have-
to the island of Skye, you'll have nothing but clouds.
Yes.
that's true. But there we need to make the clouds have more texture and more,
Yeah.
more variations.
Yeah, they can just be, ooh,
But we can do that with our collection of skies too, and
that's
use the-
true.
that technique that that Bob has shared with us so many times of having multiple camera raw images, which is a good place to use that, and darken down the sky and give it more texture, so that we can bring out some pretty blah skies and make them interesting. So please go ahead and send your suggestions, topics you want me to chat about,
Okay.
images you want me to work on. I'm going to try and work on the images or the tapes from the last meeting first, which will be the fire pumps, the couple we did for Dale, and the discussion about bit depth. Remember? And then I'll work on
Are you
this.
gonna put them on YouTube like you did the other?
That's my plan.
I really like it.
I do too.
Yeah,
That's the plan. I'll put them on YouTube. That way you should be able to get them and it doesn't clog up your machine, and
Yeah, it's
until
wonderful.
they start charging for the privilege.
Right.
We can store them there.
You can stop it and use it to work with. Mhm.
Okey doke.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
thank
Richard.
you.
Everybody have a
everybody.
wonderful.
Thank you, Richard.
Have a great week.
I'll
Yeah,
see you all soon.
see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.